On the 7th of November 2016, we released the first episode of this series, which now, 10 months later, is finally ending on the 3rd of September 2017. This is the very last episode in this year's Non-Lethal Legend, and we're going to pick our team of the year. Hello and welcome to the very final self-indulgent bit of Non-Lethal Legend this year. I'm Kev and we're here to pick our team of the year. The way we're going to do it is slightly different from last year. Rather than just showing you my 11, I'm going to give you a short list for each one. You can let me know down in the comments which one of the short list you would have picked, or which two you would have picked if it's a position that has 2 players, or 3 players if it's central midfield. And then at the end I'll share my 11 with you and you can share your 11 with me right back down in the comments. And we're going to start off with goalkeepers. So for me, there are 4 goalkeepers who stand out as worthy of note in this save. The first of which was Norberto Miguel, who for a little while I thought would be a player I took everywhere. He started with us on loan at Southend. We took him on loan to Hamilton as well. And from then on, he was just always a little bit too good for us. He went on to play 61 times for Portugal, had a long Premier League career for Watford, and then went bald. It didn't all go well for him, did it? Clementino. We met him late. We only knew him for a year and a half. Very similar. Hold on. Haircut-wise. I mean, it's... Perhaps they share the same dad. Clementino was our keeper at Bayern. He was very, very good. Played 31 times for Brazil. He's not going to be our goalkeeper in our team of the year, though, is he? Igor. Now, Igor was a proper keeper. You lot, you were having none of it. I think this is the guy who was battling out of Clementino. I mean, they were playing at the same time, so that's why neither of them have got 100 caps for Brazil, because they were fighting it out for a first team spot for Brazil for like 15 years. But the amount of times I was told to replace Igor, he did all right in the end, didn't he? 26 competition wins throughout his career, 52 caps for Brazil. He was Brazil captain for a long time. Nearly 300 games for Tottenham, as well as playing for Benfica, amongst other clubs as well. He had a pretty decent career. Can't think of any other significant goalkeepers in this save, can you? He's got the goalkeeper haircut again. Good old Kevin Thompson. If you'd have told me when we first signed him for Blackpool on loan that he'd go on to play 133 times... Okay, 133 internationals, because we thought he was English then. He was English when we signed him every time. He didn't become Jamaican until partway through his Tottenham career. But if you'd have told me back then that he'd have 133 caps to his name by the time he retired from football, age 39, I'd have said, that'll do. So we had him at Blackpool. We had him at Plymouth. We had him at Ipswich. We had him at Tottenham. And goodness me, did I try and sign him back at Bayern and Atletico and Columbus Crew, but Hearts just wouldn't sell. He was at Hearts for 11 years in the end, made 300 league appearances for them, won the league in Scotland with him, and finished his career with 9 winners' medals. Kevin Thompson, what a hero. This year's right-back situation was always going to be a little bit different because no one was ever going to beat the wonders of Lazaroff from last year, and no one ever did. It's the one position that we never really found a hero in. I've managed to find 4 who were significant, but I could take any of them in the team of the year and none of them are going to excite me. The first one would be Josh Grant. We signed him initially at Southend. He was part of that glorious back-to-back champions team at Southend. He went on to have a good career around the championship. We brought him back to Plymouth for quite a lot of money, if I recall. It'll probably say in here somewhere. Like £500,000 I think we signed him for Plymouth, and he had another good couple of years there with us as well, and then he went on a little bit of a European tour. He started his expedition of goal before I did, checking into Greece and Austria before hanging his boots up in the Austrian reserve leagues, which is, I mean, that's ridiculous really. Another one who played for Jamaica, 85 caps for Jamaica, and a solid career. Well played, Josh Grant. Went the wrong way. Umar Endai is probably the one, but I tried to replace him every single year that we were at Tottenham. But he was one of our first signings at Spurs. He played there for 9 years, all the way through the glory years we had at Tottenham. But I was never quite happy with him. But there was slim pickings for right backs this year. Fabrice Cambon, we had him for a year at Bayern. he wasn't even our first choice. I mean, I'm struggling to put 4 together here. And then lastly, Carl Colwell, because this is how much I'm struggling. We never had him for a club team. I tried to sign him every single year when I was at Tottenham, but Stoke just would not let him go. But he was my England captain for a while. He was part of that disastrous World Cup team. It looked like he was going to be leaving Stoke after that World Cup. He was on the transfer list and Atletico wanted him, but he stayed on for another 6 years, finished his career where he started it, at Stoke, played nearly 500 games for them, played over 140 games for England. I would have loved to have had him in my Spurs team. Carl Colwell, ladies and gentlemen. Centre-backs then, and we've got the first player who's still involved in football, albeit not as a player, Tommaso Orlandi. We spent a lot of money on him, £50 million when we were at Bayern, but it looks like he was a bit of a difference maker. Had a very good career with them. He's now a director of football of nobody, so as per Kev's rules, it's a bit grand to call yourself a director of football when you've never directed any football. But that's what he calls himself. He's got 15 cup wins to his name, 141 caps for Italy. That's a player and a half, really. Luis Uribe, we signed him from Man. I mean, this was when we really knew he'd arrived with Tottenham, when we could entice a player away from Man United. Man United had been dominant for so many years under Jose Mourinho, but just it's similar to in real life when Fergie left Man United. They couldn't replace Mourinho. They plummeted downwards. We kind of went past them in the other direction and just cherry-picked their best player as we went. Luis Uribe came in for an absolute ton of money, £50 million for Tottenham, but played over 400 games for us, and how many? 104 caps for Colombia. That'll do. What a player. Jesper Eriksson was our captain at Tottenham. It didn't cost us a lot, 10 million, one of our first signings, signed along with Umar and Dai, but was with us for 12 years, was our captain when we won back-to-back Champions Leagues, and he was a hero throughout. And his partner in the early days was Georgi Plotnikov. I got some stick for signing Georgi Plotnikov. He's another one who cost an awful lot of money, £60 million from Liverpool in that first Tottenham transfer window. You all thought it was nuts, and to be honest, we probably were, because once Uribe arrived, he sort of drifted onto the bench, and that's where he stayed for 12 years. So he did all right, and then finished his career in the United Arab Emirates, and 140 caps for Russia. Mirko Gabrielli, very easy to forget about him. I didn't forget about him because he was crucial to our Ipswich team, the team that won the championship. He was far too good for us, coming in from, I think he was at Lazio. He was on loan at all these different clubs, but we managed to sign him from Lazio while we were still in the championship. He was our captain when we got promoted. He was our captain when we were in the Premier League, and he stuck around for a long time after I left as well, before disappearing on his own little European tour. Never got a cap for Italy. Travesty. Tom Anderson is a player that we picked up towards the end of his career. He'd been around about the place for a long, long time before he turned up in our Southend title-winning team, but he was an integral part of that team. Disappeared off on his own little way for a little while, but then joined back up with us at Blackpool, where he was an important player for us and stuck around long after we left as well. And he got the only 2 medals of his career were Kev medals for winning League One with Southend and League Two with Blackpool. And his partner, Adam Jackson. Oh, I loved Adam Jackson. He was absolutely superb in our... What was he? He was in our Southend team, wasn't he? Yeah, Plymouth were in the wrong order. He was Anderson's partner in our Southend team. There you go, back-to-back, League Two, League One. And then he joined up with us again at Plymouth. He wasn't the same player by then. He was done. But we had to bring him back in just for his experience and for his performances in the Southend team alone. He deserves a place on this shortlist. Central midfielders, and brace yourselves, there's a lot of them. We used a lot, and we need 3 in our team of the save, because obviously we're using the 4-3-1-2. How could we not? We start off with Antonio Fiorentini, who we signed from Inter for a lot of money at Tottenham, but he played a lot of games for a long time, and a lot of games for Italy as well. He was far too good for us, and he's the only one, I think, that we signed who became a Tottenham legend, because he was there so long and won so much. 24 trophies, and almost all of them won with Tottenham. That's quite an impression. In fact, is that all? It's not even all. There's one he won with Italy under-19s. Other than that, 23 trophies with Tottenham in a 13-year career at the club. That's a pretty decent career. Look, he's going grey as well. Little grey sideburns. James Burgess. We don't need to tell you anything about James Burgess. He was England captain. He was a superstar. 27 trophies. 146 caps for England. One of my personal favourite players of this save. And I'm still impressed with myself that he's on this list as a midfielder, despite signing as a striker, because we we fixed him. We found him a way to break into our team. And what a career he had after he broke into our team. He'd never have got past Wales near Barron as a striker. But as a midfielder, that'll do. That's a decent career. Rafael Ziyech was a very important part of the early transformative years at Tottenham. I think he was already 28, 29, maybe even 30 when we signed him. But he was a world-class player, our first proper world-class player at the club, and encouraged the likes of Fiorentini, who was with it, Inter, Sedman, Oscar. Players like that wouldn't have arrived if players like Ziyech weren't already at the club. Igor Anicic. I still claim I discovered him. I don't know how he ended up at Rotherham. He played a few games with Partizan, ended up at Rotherham. We took him on loan at Ipswich immediately, had him on loan for like a season and a half before signing him permanently, and then being forced to sell him to Tottenham, where he played another 100 games. We joined up with him again there. We then sold him on to Bayern because we replaced him. And we then joined up with him again at Bayern, where he played far more games than he ever did anywhere else. And it looks like later in his career he became a goalkeeper, looking at that haircut. I mean, Igor, where's your hair gone? 117 games for Serbia as well. And that's a pretty decent career. What's he got? How many trophies? 10 winners' medals. And a nice spread between all of our clubs. I mean, if anyone represents our career nicely, apart from maybe Kevin Thompson, Igor Anicic with medals at Ipswich, Bayern, Tottenham. He's a proper Kev player. Tommy Duxbury was very important to that Ipswich team in the same way as Gabrielli. Never got his international recognition because he was never really good enough, but he was so good for us at the time. 162 games for Ipswich before carrying on and having a decent championship career with Forest and Birmingham as well. Just a very good championship player who was far too good for us when we arrived. And remember, when we first arrived at Ipswich, he was a left back and we played him as an attacking midfielder because he was that much better than everybody else. We averaged it out in the end and he played as our box-to-box midfielder for a number of years. Aaron O'Brien, the one that got away. We had him on loan for 2 years at Ipswich, 3 years at Ipswich according to that, but could never sign him permanently. When we got promoted into the Premier League, one of the first things that happened to us in the Premier League was this angry-looking man scored a goal against us for Newcastle, and I was very sad. Would have loved to have signed him permanently, but it was not to be. Gedeon Zelalem was massively important to that Southend team and went on to become an absolute hero at Southend. Nearly 400 games for the club. And I never did learn to say his name properly. And then Aaron Cool, who's on this list, not really for what he did for our Southend and Ipswich teams, although he was an important member of both of those teams, but just for the fact that this man turns up in every save that I have, and it's not always deliberate. He was a massive part of our Ipswich team on Non-League Legend last year. He was a big part of the Deeping Rangers team we've had on the Sugar Daddy this year, and I didn't even sign him, and he's turned up in 2 of our most important teams in Non-League Legend this year, and he's got amazing hair. So for all those reasons alone, he gets an honorary mention. But the one that I can't show you, because he's apparently not in the database anymore, I can't believe they've deleted Wagner. I've checked all these non-playing Wagners. None of them are him. He's been deleted, which I'm really sad about, because he was one of my favourites. Attacking midfielders then, and what a bunch of players we've got to choose from here. I could have easily had 5 of these in my team of the save because they were all so good. Imagine how good Alexis Di Maria would have been if he'd have existed before the age of 25. He spontaneously was created in the save when we added Argentina in really late on. So he didn't appear until he was like 23, 24 at Newell's. We snapped him up at Bayern for an absolute steal, and he was absolutely incredible. I should have signed him for Atletico rather than Oscar because I would have got him for half the price, and he was probably a better player. But don't tell Oscar that. Ended up only playing less than 200 games in his career, only 36 caps for Argentina, but that's not representative at all because he started so very late. Who on earth is Benjamin Sebrain? It's Sir Brian, of course. Can we give him a nickname now? We can't give him a nickname anymore. Sir Brian. What can I say about Sir Brian? I mean, he was rubbish. We know he was rubbish. But he had a silly name. He got himself a nickname. And he was an important fringe player at 2 different clubs. He was in our Tottenham team. He passed through Bayern at a different time to us and ended up joining up with us again at Atletico. For a really average player, what a career this man has managed to carve out for himself. 7 winners' medals. He's won the World Club Championship. He's won the Champions League twice. I don't understand how he's played for Tottenham, Bayern, Real Madrid and Atletico when he's a bang average player. A round of applause for Sir Brian, everybody, and he's become a goalkeeper as well. Oscar, he's another player who reckons he's a director of football despite not directing any football. We had a look at him on the episode yesterday to see that he actually ended up at Celtic, but he was the player that changed everything at Tottenham. It was our first proper wonder kid that we brought in. Yes, we overspent for him, but he was a difference maker. He didn't make quite as much of a difference for me at Atletico. I'm saying I'd have rather had Di Maria. I think Atletico are pretty happy with the player they ended up with because he did recapture that Tottenham form for a good 5 or 6 years in an Atletico shirt and ended up playing 128 games for Turkey as well. So close to being the most romantic story in the history of Football Manager YouTube saves. He was this close to being our Jamie Vardy. He was this close to playing in every single playable league in the game. In fact, I think we did give him a Premier League game, didn't we? But it was that playoff, was it a semi-final or a final for Plymouth, where at that point he'd played in every playable league. He'd played in the Conference North, Conference South, Conference National, League 2, League 1. He was in the Championship, in the playoffs. He was the absolute star man, playing well above himself. He wasn't good enough to be in the team, but he had an absolutely blinding game and we just missed out. And I think in the end we did bring him to Ipswich and just give him that Premier League appearance, just so he could say that he'd played in every playable league in England. Lee Hartley is my hero. Keith Shorthouse is a manager, the first one of my alumni who's become a manager. We had him at Blackpool, we had him at Plymouth. He was awesome. I mean, he was a much better player than Lee Hartley, but he ended up being kind of cast aside because of how brilliant Hartley was doing. And he's been Accrington manager now for 8 years. So he's had a nice little managerial career as well. Well done, Keith Shorthouse. And then Jonathan Benteke, the catalyst for the save, really. If we hadn't been able to sign Jonathan Benteke for Southend, we wouldn't have got the back-to-back promotions. We signed him on loan, I think, in League 2 when he was far too good for us. And he just waltzed through that league. We managed to sign him permanently the next year. And we waltzed through that league. And it was those back-to-back promotions, spearheaded by Jonathan Benteke, playing well below himself, that allowed us to go on to all the stuff we achieved later on. So a special mention has to go to Benteke. And lastly then, the strikers. Starting with, a lot of people say he's their favourite player to save. He really let me down when we were at Plymouth, so I still haven't really forgiven him for that. But Martel Taylor-Crossdale, that season he had for Southend, he was the most prolific striker I'd ever seen in Football Manager. It was ridiculous. Scored an absolute ton of goals for Southend, and he was there a long, long time before eventually moving on to Portsmouth to meet up with us again at Plymouth, where he never really got in the team on a regular basis. And he then went on to have a mediocre managerial career where he was always the rival manager who liked me the best. And for that, well played, Martel Taylor-Crossdale. Raquel Pike is another legend of that Southend team who couldn't recapture his form at another one of our clubs. Scored at more than a goal every other game for our Southend team after joining on loan and then eventually permanently. We took him to Scotland with Hamilton and he just never got anywhere near the team. He just wasn't good enough. He did try his hand at being a manager as well, but I mean, I think he found his level. 28 goals and 126 appearances for Rafe. He never really recaptured the form from those couple of seasons at Carlisle and at Southend when he's top scorer in the division. Where was he? Runner-up in League 2 when he was at Carlisle. That's why we brought him in, and he was a decent striker, but just never really moved on from there. Mark Foote. We said a lot about Mark Foote yesterday. The man who wanted to leave Ipswich, we convinced him to stay, and he ended up scoring lots of goals and having a really good career with Ipswich. Jordan Todd, just because of that cup run. That cup run was brilliant. When we were in the Championship with Ipswich and he just decided he was going to be better than all the Premier League strikers. And then when we got to the Premier League, this lad who'd never been any good for us in the league in the Championship, but was good on the cup run, just exploded onto the Premier League as well and was suddenly worth 15 million quid. And no one understood why. And then he went off. Where did he go? Disappeared off to Las Palmas for just, I mean, he didn't go for 15 million quid because the bubble burst fairly quickly with Jordan Todd. But for a year and a half, we thought we really had something with Jordan Todd. Cotton Eye Joe, again, nicknames have been removed, but Cotton Eye Joe, scored some goals for us. Scored some goals against us as well. And he was the victim of my ruthless, right, you're 30, get out, that I did eventually grow out of with the likes of Sedman and Ziyech. And that's when we started winning stuff. If I'd have changed my mind a year earlier, he might have stayed. We might never have signed Iribarren. And how might things have been different if that had been the case? Michael Vendrig, just for that one season. That one season where everyone else was injured and he had to play up front on his own for a year and finished, was he top scorer in the Premier League? Or runner-up? And he was runner-up to Iribarren, wasn't he, when Iribarren was still at Liverpool? But the only fit striker at the club, and he just absolutely stepped up to the plate and kept me in a job, because if he hadn't done that year, I'd have been fired. We never would have done what we did. So Michael Vendrig officially saved the career and kept his hair, which is good. Ruben Iribarren is another director of football who doesn't direct any football. I think he was worth every penny of 91 million quid, wasn't he? He scored plenty of goals for Spurs, went to Bilbao in the end. He got 85 goals from 92 caps for Spain. And I hope someone gives him a job as a director of football. He deserves a proper job. And then Liam Wells, that ridiculous human being, is still playing football now. He's 36 years old. A spectacular career for Tottenham. And now just finishing it off. I'll just have a casual couple of years with Valencia. Why not? And as we know, England's all-time record goal scorer of 112 goals from 126 caps. And then the other guy who's still playing is Malashev. He's only 32 now, which shows just how young he was when we signed him. 91 goals from 124 caps for Russia. He was just never as good after that first season. Where was he? That was his first season. That first season for Bayern, when we were there, was remarkable. 23 goals from 20 starts. Sorry, 23 goals from 18 starts in the Bundesliga is ridiculous. And he just never did it again. And I don't know why. But I thought he was great. All of which leads to this, my team of the save. Like I said at the start, let me know down in the comments how this differs from your team of the save. But I've got to go for Kevin Thompson in goal. It's the last time I'm ever going to get to say that. Number one, Kevin Thompson. You were a legend, Big Kev, and I shall miss you desperately. Back four of Undai at right back, because there was no one any better. Rob Tamelty at left back, just for the yellow cards. Centre backs, we've got Eriksson and Jackson. Eriksson, our captain when we won the Champions League for the first time, and Jackson just because he was our captain when we won the back-to-backs with Southend? He was certainly integral to that team. In midfield, I know I can't find him on the database anymore, but I've got to play Wagner as a central midfielder on defend one more time just to get the abuse one last time, and he's going to be flanked by Igor Anicic just because this was almost like the story of Igor Anicic's life. James Burgess on the right-hand side of midfield. I'd be inclined to make him captain, just like he was for England playing in that role. Lee Hartley. We want Lee Hartley in that moment when he was at his best, and he wouldn't look out of place at all in that team if it was when he was absolutely in form. And then up front, I don't see how we go for anything other than Ruben Iribarren and Liam Wells, the two best strikers I've ever seen in Football Manager. That's right, they're better than Aaron, they're better than Modou Fall. They're better than Thierry Ambrose, and that is saying something. So let me know down in the comments what your team in the save is. What I'm going to do is set up a straw poll as well, where I'm going to pick my 5 favourite players of the save. You lot can then vote on which one of those 5 is your favourite. Whoever wins the poll, we're going to put out a shirt with their name and number on the back, and like mocked up, it looks like a football shirt on the front, but with non-league to legend on it, that kind of thing. But whoever wins that poll, it will be their name and number on the back, and that shirt will then be released just for a limited time when we hit 15,000 subscribers on the channel, to celebrate 15,000 subscribers and to celebrate the end of this year's non-league to legend. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everybody who's enjoyed the series all the way through. I've enjoyed it massively, and I'm really looking forward to what we're starting tomorrow. If you've enjoyed that, please make sure you pop a like on there for me one last time. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more, and thank you very much for watching.